better than ever. And I know right now that I'm going somewhere and I need some cheddar. Oh, baby, better not.
Hey everyone, it's Andre Luck here to share my next episode of the Sports Sales Show, where I'm going to talk about the quickest way to 5x your close rate, which is through multi-threading. And so what that means is a term a lot of us use in sales. It means we have multiple relationships, multiple contacts within an account or a company or an organization that we're selling. So why that's so beneficial, there's no one decision maker. We need to make sure that we're involved with a lot of people. So it used to be the case back in the day. So what we're going to talk through in today's episode is how do you do that well? How do you leverage tools like AI and ChatGPT to identify who some of those deal blockers are or what the risk is in some of your accounts and make introduction to some of those people? And then we're actually going to go through recorded, but like a live workshop of how you do that with ChatGPT. And where this inspiration of this episode came last week, we worked with the Los Angeles Angels, their sales team, and their groups team. And a lot of you that work in group sales know when you're working in groups, a lot of your clients are employee outings, HR people. So like, that type of stuff, which is great for volume, great if they're, come back year over year and have a good time and you could grow those. Awesome for your book of business. But what she said and what they really wanted to get out of the training is like, not only to do well with that, but how do we tap into other areas of the business? Because heavily B2B focused account growth strategies is what we talked about. And so we teach that the employee budget for any company is this, but the sales and marketing budget is this. So they're like, how do we tap into that sales and marketing budget and align with objectives to grow new clients or acquire new business or take care of your current customers and look to grow them? So they want to move from, all right, we work with the head of HR to the head of sales and the head of marketing. And so we went through tips and tools to do that. And I'll share some of those best practices and leverage ChatGPT and AI to do that as well. So as I mentioned, there used to be one sole decision maker. And that was what I was taught coming up. And a lot of people still teach that, like, get to the decision maker. And there probably is one person that signs off or gives a thumbs up on budget approval, but it's a committee now. Like there's collaboration, there's joint decisions. There's not one person just running rogue within an organization just making decisions. There's people that are making sure these all align. There's people that are measuring and making sure that we're getting the return that we expect out of the purchase that we're having. There's the end user who's making ensuring success and getting the usage and utilization out of it. So there's so many people that are involved now that we can't just work with one decision maker. And there's so much more data now to measure it that we want to make sure we're being profitable. Companies are being judged on their profitability, and maybe their investors are looking to get acquired. So they want to make sure that everything they spend on, they're getting their appropriate return. So no one's just buying sports tickets now just because it's like the thing to do. And if so, like those trends are starting to shift away and it's less about status and it's more business impact. So when you're selling tickets, you could easily get bucketed into like the luxury categories. You want to make sure that you're not that and that you have multiple advocates within the company and that you're talking specifically to those people about what's important to them. The other thing that's important here is like, what if your champion leaves? There's so much turnover and transition and promotion within companies now. But let's say you're working with, Sharon, who oversees sales, and Sharon leaves and goes to another company, or Sharon gets fired. And like now you're like, all right, who's the new Sharon? You got to get them up to speed. And at least if you have some advocates, even if it's maybe lower people or other people in other departments, you got some people that can kind of give you the lay of the land. Like, hey, Sharon's gone. Like, who's the person now? What are their objectives? How are things changing within the business? So when I talk about ways that you can increase your close rate, it's that. And you have multiple sales opportunities now within it. So what I'll talk about now is buying committees. So that's who's making decisions now. In most deals, there's usually like 3 to 5 people. In larger companies and larger deal sizes, it's like 10 to 12 people that are involved in the buying committee. And so they're all, like I said, they have different stakes in like making this decision. There's people quantifying it from like, all right, what's the return we're getting and how does this align with other things and investments that we're spending on and looking to invest in and like ways that we can grow our business. And there's people looking to utilize it. And so we got to understand like who each of those people are and all their different priorities. Because, let's say that you're working with someone who oversees sales and you're just focusing on new client acquisition with the tickets and with the suite or whatever it is that you're looking to sell. But the marketing person's in, like, they don't, I mean, yes, they care, but they don't really care because their focus is building up the brand or getting leads at the top of the funnel. So you want to make sure that you're crafting your messaging and your language to all the people in the buying committee so that they feel it's for them. And then that helps when, at the end of the deal, someone comes in and is like, oh, we don't think we should do it. And you got these deal blockers in there. You can get out in front of some of those objections and you pull those people in early. So we'll talk about how to tactically do that and what are some of the best practices relates to that. And so a couple like real life situations that I went through that I think would kind of help further this point. As a VP of sales, there were two different technologies. We had one was Zoom Info and one was LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And so for Zoom Info, great tool because it allowed you to get direct contact information. So if I'm going to XYZ company, I don't have to call the gatekeeper and Google and hope that I get to the right person and they pass me through. I can go directly to the person. So great tool for our B2B sales team. And what I was looking to do is expand the usage across the entire sales team. I saw the B2C sales process getting more transactional. And I think more young sellers and newer sellers should be focused on B2B. So I wanted to get more licenses, but Zoom Info was a little more costly product. I didn't need all the bells and whistles. So I wanted to move to another product that had everything we needed, some new innovative things they were looking to do, but it allowed me to get more licenses at the same price as I was paying. So for me, it was a win-win. The salesperson identified my pain, my need, all the things, did everything right, got budget approval, got on the right timeline. So as the last step of this was, all right, now I'm going to let my team know we're going to do a demo or a little trial to make sure that everything's good. And, after that, assuming the, couple week trial goes well, we're going to shift over. They didn't even want to do the trial. Like as soon as I told them we were shifting, they're like, "You're changing my world." Like they revolted. Like I need to have this. This is how I do business and how I do B2B sales. I'm like, I'm looking at the data. Like you don't ever use it. Like what does it matter what we shift to? Like we can just go to another platform now. And no, they weren't having it. So that year the deal got blocked. Come back around. We were up for renewal again. I was like, look, I gave you the chance last year. They didn't use it, so we ended up switching to the tool that I wanted to anyways. But in that initial deal, salesperson did everything right and assumed that the deal was happening, and I even gave him thumbs up. I was like, hey, like my staff wants to use this. I could have like overruled them, but you need buy-in from your team because you need to make sure that they're using the investment and that they're bought in. So that was one on the end user side. One on the executive side where I'm the champion, I'm the decision maker, I make the budget, everything like that. And so we bought LinkedIn Sales Navigator and I worked with my customer success person, and every quarter we'd have meetings. She did everything right and even gave me like ROI, like here's the return you're getting from it. So when you go for renewal, like prep me for these conversations. But this deal almost got blocked too because, this year finance was going to look at all of our investments and kind of reassess like, where should we be spending our dollars? And so I was like, oh, we need this tool for this. And like, well, don't you have another one similar to that? So like they almost came in and blocked, and the executive leadership came in. I was like, why are we getting this? And why don't are we actually getting the return from it? And so I was armed because my salesperson did a great job of prepping me for those conversations. But those are both situations where if you're just working with one person and you're not aware of like the buying committee that goes into making those decisions and what happens on the other end after you send that proposal, like you could lose a lot of deals. So it's good to loop them in where you can if it makes sense, or at least be aware of like all the people that typically get involved in a decision like that so that you don't end up getting that. And then the other thing that's really important is adapting your communication style to that person. So let's say, you are working with like a head of sales and you end up speaking to the finance person. Like what's important to the salesperson may not be as important to the finance person. So you got to adapt your language. If you're talking to someone who's in charge of new client acquisition on the sales side, but then maybe like the person who's in charge of customer retention is involved, like you want to talk and hit on things that are important to them. So there's different ways you could do that, and we'll talk through scenarios on how you could do it here in a second. But you want to adapt your communication style to the person that you're talking to and have relevant talking points, understand pain points that go on for their role specifically. Because ideally, yes, everyone should work together and think about the company, but they're really focused on their priority, what's going on in their day to day, their department. So we want to hit on things that are important to them. The other thing that you want to think about is, a lot of times you're working with like an executive assistant or maybe the person that's like handles the tickets, like the end user. And we say this a lot, like you end up speaking to who you sound like. So if you go into this conversation, tickets, pricing, or I work with companies that sell tickets, or I sell group tickets, they're like, oh, you need to talk to Sam. Sam handles the group tickets. And Sam may just be the person that just distributes the tickets, and that's what people know. But you want to talk to the person who's in charge of, let's say you're using group tickets for your employees, and like you want to talk to the person in charge of employee incentives, employee recognition. Let's say it's a sales use case. You want to talk to the person in charge of all of the new client acquisition priorities and programs that they do, not the person who ends up giving out the tickets. Because yeah, I'll work with that person on the back end, but I want to get and aligned with, executive objectives. And that's where I unlock more budget. That's where I get more sign off and connections. So I want to multi-thread within the account and get introduced up to someone else. And I need to speak that language. So great ways to do that. If you're new to sales, ChatGPT, Copilot, some sort of Gen AI tool, and just ask them like, hey, I work with this person. I'm new to sales. I don't know what the VP of sales for a technology or software development company is focused on. So how do I adjust my language to do that? We'll go through some prompts here so you can see what that looks like in real life. But like those are things that you really have to think about when it comes to multi-threading and why it's so important. The other reason it's so important is a lot of times salespeople, and I did this, on their outreach, they focus on one person and they only do a couple touch points. They don't work, the full account and all the people within an account that could purchase. So in each company, larger than like a small business, you could sell to the salesperson, the sales leader, marketing leader, IT. I've seen do outings, HR executives, but we'll go after one person, like, director of business development. They have their season tickets. They've had them for 15 years and like, oh, that account's good. They could have multiple locations. Even within that one location, there's other sales use cases, but we don't even explore it. We're like, oh, the account's good and no one else can talk to anyone else within the account. I own it all. So that's one mistake we make a lot of times is we don't penetrate it deep enough. And then the other issue that we run into sometimes is like on outreach, we'll just reach out to one person, but not even do that thorough enough. So like we reached out, there's a local bank or there's, a Fortune 500 company. We reach out to one person within the account and then close it out and we own it all, but no one else could reach out. But I didn't even do a thorough job reaching out. So there's definitely conversation needs to be had around just like outreach strategy and like account guidelines. But at the end of the day, you should be looking at that as 5 different sales opportunities. I could sell to this person, I could sell to that person. They all have budgets and they all have use cases. Ideally, they bring it all together, but like it's so tough to like get them to align on just like internal business objectives, let alone on a ticket package. So I'd start with a land and kind of expand process where I'm going to take care of each one of them, figure out what their use case is. If they end up talking and want to bring it together, great. And I'm going to make sure a separate solution is what we call that within the proposal. But at the end of the day, I see all those as different sales opportunities. So I want to make sure that I'm hitting everyone within it. So different scenarios on when you'd multi-thread. So I touched on like on the new outreach side, getting to as many people as possible. The other thing that you'll want to do is look them all up on LinkedIn and connect with all of them on LinkedIn. A lot of sales reps are hesitant to reach out to multiple people at once because they don't want to come off as too pushy or that salesperson. The best salespeople aren't patient. Like they go and they make things happen. They're proactive. But again, like people and leaders don't even like work well together on the things that like are coming from their boss that they want them to work on. So there's no way that they're talking like, oh, I got a call from Andre, the salesperson. Like, did you get one too? Like, if you did, that's a good thing because obviously you did something that stood out. But reach out to all of them at the same time and connect with all of them at the same time as well because they're more likely to accept your connection request if they see you're connected with other people within the organization. But now you can get a good lay of the land of like what's going on. You can see what they're posting, they could see what you're posting, and you're connected with multiple people. So making it like tactical, like those are things that you could do on the new prospect side to reach out to multiple people and connect with all of them on LinkedIn. Once you're in the deal, and let's say you met with the head of sales and you identified there's other people that are typically involved in these type of decisions, like bring them into the next meeting and you want to talk to each of them about their priorities and objectives. You want to set it up beforehand. Hey, what would be most impactful in this meeting that you could get out of this? After the meeting, give them a call, send them a voicemail, send them a voice note. send them a personalized video about, hey, it was great that you brought this up, and as a follow-up, here's some things specific to your area. Like, there's different ways that you just increase the likelihood that you're going to get closer to a sale and get out in front of all the objections that potentially could come up. And then the one that we talked about with the angels, that was really kind of the genesis of this like video and this episode is, they were working a lot with people that are current clients for like employee outings, and they wanted to get introduced to other people within the organization. So that's a great use case, and probably the most likely to convert, the easiest lift if you're in sports sales right now. Look at your current book of business and who are other people that they can introduce you to. So you don't have to go out and chase all this new business. You can, get people within the current account that are already there. So, those are things, and, in a second, I'll share what it looks like to get tactical with it, like through ChatGPT, but other tips and tools to kind of help you, like bring in your executive leadership. One of the things that they could really help with is, helping speak that same language. And they like to network with other people that, have similar type roles. So if you're working with a president or CEO, bring in your executives, bring in your president or CEO. If you're working with like a head of finance, bring in your head of finance, and like just you leverage those relationships to help you and help you get deeper in the process and help you close some of those sales and everything like that. So yeah, what we'll talk through and what we'll kind of work through, and I'll share kind of what we did with the angels like all the way through. We showed them how to take like a head of HR and then get introduced to people like business development or marketing or sales. But also we use prompts to say like, all right, who are other people that maybe I'm not working with, and what are priorities that may be important to them? Then it was, all right, now give me an email template, give me a talk track to help me to ask my main contact to get introduced to them. So we wrote out like, here's your talk track, here's the phone call, what you say on a phone call, here's the email you'd send. Then when you get introduced to that person, here's the messaging that you would say, but to talk to that person, like, hey, I work with, Sharon in HR, and they said that you'd be the best person to speak with about this. And then boom, now you're setting a meeting with them. Then we walk through actually running the meeting and like what questions you ask different than based on the person you're already working with. So we literally took them from like, hey, look at one of your current accounts that is probably going to renew, and let's look at how for 2026 we can expand and grow that account, another 10, 15, $20,000 that we weren't going to do anyway. So I'm excited to hear kind of how some of that plays out and like the returns that come from it. But like those are easy wins right now that teams could just, execute and just reach out to people already within their accounts and not have to go chase new business, and they could exceed their sales goals like crazy. So excited to see that. And so I'll show you some parts of that of how we kind of walk through that with them.
That's nothing. I'ma be doing this and I'm gonna be head hunting. Oh baby, don't know. Oh baby, don't go. Oh baby, don't know. Oh baby, don't go.